CBT Nuggets ITIL Update Series, Service Lifecycle, and Service Strategy. Hi, my name is Michael Shannon, and I'm the instructor for the ITIL series. And we're going to first of all talk about this ITIL Update series, why it's necessary, and what we're going to cover here in these 5 update nuggets. When I first developed this ITIL series about 3 years ago, the transition from ITIL version 2 to ITIL version 3 was kind of right in the transition process. I caught it right at the end of version 2, the beginning of version 3. At the time, some of the information that was going to be presented in version 3 was not totally standardized. However, CBT Nuggets wanted to make sure that our customers had an ITIL version 3 series available to them as soon as that new update was available. Well, several things have changed in the last 3 years, and so the purpose of this update series in these 5 nuggets is to kind of solidify the service life cycle that's covered in ITIL version 3 and the main areas. In that service life cycle, we have the service strategy, which we're going to cover here in this particular nugget. We'll talk first of all about the service life cycle. We'll look at the service strategy, the concepts and processes, kind of summarize the whole thing. We'll look at the service portfolio management, financial management, and demand management. That's what we're going to cover in this first nugget. In the next nuggets, we're going to look at the service design aspect of the life cycle, then the service transition component of the life cycle, the service operation component, and then finally, the continual service improvement. So we'll use these 5 nuggets to kind of get you up to speed on all of the modifications and changes and the most recent information available to you for ITIL version 3 foundations. Let's go ahead and dive in now and take a look at an overview of the service lifecycle. Let's take a look at the ITIL version 3 lifecycle. Here you can see at the inside, the core is the IT infrastructure library. Then we have the next layer, or the next phase, is service strategy. Now, what we're going to see here is 5 phases of this life cycle. You've got service strategy, then service design, service transition, service operation, and then finally the continual process improvement. Doesn't matter if you're dealing with the CISA or CISM or ITIL or really any process life cycle, the goal is constant improvement, continual improvement. And realize that even though these are 5 phases here, they're not necessarily distinct or separate. They're not carried out in a particular order. Each phase, for example, service strategy, is going to affect service design as well as transition and operation. The continual process improvement is going to apply to each one of these phases as well. But that being said, in the service strategy phase, this is where we're going to identify the needs and the demands, the priorities, the importance for the services that we want. We're going to identify the value that's being created through the services and what we are going to assume are the financial resources necessary to design, deliver, and support these services. So here we want to understand exactly what the business needs are, the business synergy. We have to define value. We're also going to have some management areas here. We'll have service portfolio management, financial management, and demand management. Next, we have the service design phase. This is going to be where we design our infrastructure and the support mechanisms, the processes and procedures that we have to use to meet availability requirements for our customer. And again, remember, our customer can be our internal organization, or they can be a client or an outside customer. Then we have the service transition phase. This is where we're going to validate that we're addressing the functional and technical criteria to justify releasing the service or the product to the customer. Then we have the service operation phase. This is going to be monitoring and reporting, auditing the ongoing availability that we're offering. During this phase, we're also going to manage and resolve incidents that can affect service availability. And then in the continual process improvement, we're going to be coordinating the synergy by collecting data and information and creating knowledge bases about the quality and performance of the services that we're offering and the service management activities that we're doing. Service improvement plans are developed and coordinated to improve every component that's involved in our overall management and delivery of IT services. As we can see here, there's several areas of service design. We've got supplier management, service level management, service catalog management, and availability management. And again, some of these areas are going to look quite familiar to you because we covered these in the original ITIL series. In service transition, we have things like change management that you're familiar with, knowledge management, release and deployment management, service testing and validation, and configuration management. In the service operation phase, we have incident management, event management, and problem management. And of course, all of this, the continual service reporting and service measurement through the final continual process improvement phase. Our first phase is service strategy, and for a service provider to be able to grow and to function successfully, they have to operate in a strategic way. So service strategy is going to give us objectives of making the right decisions regarding services and IT service management. And then through these decisions, IT can then drive value to the business, the service provider business, and to the customer through effectively applying capabilities and resources. Over the last 10 years, the complexity of IT and the dependency of business on technology has made the evolution of the service provider one that is really hard to keep up with. So IT has to become more business-oriented, more competitive, more focused, with the goal of being the preferred IT provider. That's really the main objective. So we have really three primary objectives. Number one, we want to design and implement service management as a strategic asset and offer growth of an organization. Two, we want to develop the IT organization's capabilities to manage costs as well as manage risks that are associated with whatever service portfolios they offer. And then thirdly, the third objective is to define strategic objectives of the IT organization. So how do we create service value as a service provider? Well, we're going to do that with this formula. It's service warranty plus service utility gives us service value. So the question we ask with warranty, is it fit for use? Is it available enough? Is there enough capacity? Is it secure enough? Is it continuous enough? That's the warranty. The utility is, are we supporting performance? Have we removed the constraints? Is it fit for the purpose? When you combine meeting the goals of purpose and meeting the goals of use, the result is value to the customer. Now, how do we offer choice and value to our customers as a service provider? Well, we do that with service packages and service level packages. Now, let me give you an example of a service package. It's the best way to explain it. I work out of a small office, home office. I work for a large Fortune 500 company, and I also do consulting work for companies like CBT Nuggets. Now, out of my home office, a service provider might want to offer me a service package. That might be a broadband super user package or a power user package for, let's say, $69.95 or $79.99 a month. Okay? Or maybe they're going to offer me a small business package, which is $99 a month or $120 a month. And in that service package, I have a core service, which offers me my internet connection at certain upload and download speeds is probably asymmetric, and email addressing. And again, I can get this provided, let's say, through DSL or cable or satellite. And that might be the basic service I have. Maybe I get 1 to 5 to 20 email addresses. I can have static IP addresses. I can also get some spam filtering, maybe even some web space, and maybe some core voice over IP services. That could be a service package. But then I can also move up and have what's called service level packages. Service level packages are going to define the level of utility and warranty. Remember, we talked about that, our level of value that we want. So service level packages are an effective way for the service provider to provide me different levels of utility and warranty that are appropriate with my needs and my budget. So it can be availability and capacity levels, upload speed, download speeds, maybe a backup dial-up account or a backup ISDN connection, some type of availability guarantee, maybe 98% uptime, service desk support 24/7, and security levels can be offered as well. So to summarize, a service package is going to contain typically a core service package, which is the basic critical services, then some type of supporting service package, and that could be like a number of email accounts or spam filtering or antivirus, for example. And then I can add to that the service level packages. I'll put SLP here. And again, that goes back to the kind of value that I want as a customer: service warranty, service utility. And realize, as a provider, a lot of these service packages and service level packages are kind of reusable components that they can sell to multiple customers. It's not cost effective for a provider to offer every customer this totalized a la carte customized service. That's not cost effective for the provider, and it also doesn't really fit in line with being able to meet the needs of all of our customers in an efficient and strategic way. Now, there are strategic processes that are included in this service strategy phase, and these three lifecycle processes are service portfolio management, the financial management aspect, and demand management. Now let's take a look at these one at a time, starting with the service portfolio management. Now, real quick, before I move on to this, I want to delineate something here. There's another way to look at this service package and service level package approach. We can have what are called the core services, and I pretty much have defined those. The core services, then we have what can be called, kind of the mid-level enabling services. And then at the highest level, we have what are called enhancing services. So we could actually look at the core and enabling services as the service package, and the service level package be the enhancing service. So the core service would be a service that basically delivers the basic outcome that's desired by most of the customers. Our supporting services could be the enabling services, services that enable and even go further with service level and enhance the core service. You might hear those terms used interchangeably, so I wanted to get those in there before we moved on to service portfolio, financial, and demand management. For example, if I'm a service provider that wants to provide enhancing services or service level packages to, let's say, an enterprise organization or a large corporation, I might want to look at providing secure services for any-to-any communication. So to be able to support things like IP telephony, or we would call it voice over IP or VoIP, to provide support for VoIP, multicasting, audio, video, streaming services, all of these things over a metropolitan area. I want to provide enhancing services or service level packages that provide things like MPLS, VPN, or dynamic multipoint, that should be an M, dynamic multipoint VPN, or some of the newer things like Get VPN services. These would be enhancing services or service level packages that I could provide and offer the enterprise or the large corporation in a metropolitan area to provide any-to-any secure communications over their wide area network or their metropolitan area network. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead now and look at the service portfolio financial management and demand management components of the service strategy. Okay, well, as mentioned, there are three processes in the service strategy aspect of the life cycle. And these processes are going to work together. First of all, we have the service portfolio management. And the main goal here of service portfolio is to offer the direction, the strategic focus, and the control of investments into our IT service management. The goal here is to optimize our portfolio of services. Remember, we're not going to just offer on-the-fly ad hoc services as a provider or as a service desk. We're going to create modular portfolios that can be continually maintained and optimized. We also want to make sure that we can improve the capabilities and the capacities for supporting a wide variety of business processes and services, and of course geared towards our customer, either the internal customer of our enterprise or the customer of our service provider. We want to be able to delineate and identify the IT service business value. What type of business value do we offer through our IT services? Whether they be security services, voice services, video, audio streaming capabilities, and not just network services. That's my specialty, so I kind of gravitate towards networking and security services. But we're talking about the wide range of IT services. We also use the service portfolio management to store accurate data, and this can be done in a wide variety of ways. My favorite way to do this is to use Microsoft SharePoint. I'm a big fan of SharePoint. I spent well over a year traveling around the United States and Canada doing SharePoint consulting. So I love the synergy between Microsoft SharePoint and ITIL. So I can use something like this with its document libraries and all of its capabilities for reporting and web-based management, for planning, for providing accurate data for our current services, and the disposition of IT services and the data that's related to those retired IT services. And then also, we're going to use service portfolio management to answer strategic questions. For example, why would our internal customer or our service provider customer even want to buy these services? What is the value to the customer? And then why should they buy them from us? What makes us as a service provider or an internal service provider as opposed to outsourcing? Why should they want to buy these from us? What are our pricing models, and what are our chargeback models? And we'll talk in a second here about chargeback. And chargeback is a way, for example, as a service provider to, let's say, charge for additional services or charge for, let's say, bursting of bandwidth, let's say, or ad hoc security needs to secure a any-to-any voice over IP solution or multicasting solution. What are our chargeback models? What if they exceed their rates or allocation during the lifetime of a contract? As a service provider, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses? What are our priorities? And what risks are there to the services that we provide? And how do we allocate the resources and the capabilities? So we have to ask and answer strategic questions as part of the service portfolio management. And the scope of portfolio management is always going to be related to business value. And this is the constant and the continual evolution of the synergy and the tightly coupling information technology with the business aspect. Even if it's a non-for-profit organization that we're providing services to as a customer, they still have budgetary issues and allocation that they have to deal with. Now, as we look at managing our service portfolio, again under the umbrella of service strategy, we want to realize that there are three separate categories in our portfolio. The first is what we call the service pipeline. This would be services that are kind of in the pipeline, okay? So they've been proposed or they're in development. So for example, we've been offering, let's say at our service provider, we've been offering IPsec VPN. okay, and some basic SSL, TLS, public key infrastructure-based security for web clients. But now we're gonna put in the pipeline some other solutions like maybe Cisco's Get VPN, things like that. Maybe we're providing, enhanced quality of service with our voice over IP solution. Again, I'm focusing here on networking and security because that's my specialty, but you can apply this to IT for whatever business you are, for a large bakery, for example, or a delivery service, or a manufacturing firm. Then, of course, we have the category of the service catalog, and these are the actual live services that we are offering now. Okay, these are the ones that are available to be deployed and sold to our internal customers or to our service provider customers. And then we have the third category. Those are decommissioned services, those that have been disposed of or decommissioned or retired. Okay, so those are the three main categories. Now, as we decide to put our portfolio together, whether it's the existing catalog or the pipeline, we want to think about where do we, get our information from, okay? How do we decide upon the portfolio that we're going to offer? Well, this will come from obviously experience. It will come from just being in touch with your industry. It can come from databases, repositories of white papers, and research and development. It can be information stored in a repository like SharePoint. We can get it from financial systems to find out, what are the most profitable services to provide our customers right now. It can come from project management, from our vendors, from partners, from customers. So, and we learn from project management, for example, the projects that they're undertaking at their organization, how we can meet those project needs using technology. And of course, this is a dynamic process. First, we're going to define, all right? We're going to validate this data. Accumulating the data and the research and the reports and the white papers is one thing, but we have to have definite, specific assessments of the service and the investment that we're going to make. What are the benefits, the potential benefits of those services? What are the resources and capabilities I need to implement something like Get VPN? What kind of Cisco routers and security appliances do I need? And how do I maintain those? Does the customer maintain them? Do I offer that as a portfolio or as a service, part of my portfolio? Okay. We also want to say, what we can do and what we can't do. We need to know our limitations. And this is where during the definition process or during define, we start to actually come up with our creation of our service portfolio. And then we're going to analyze. We're going to maximize the value of that portfolio. We want to ask questions like, what are the long-term goals of the service organization? What do we need to meet those goals? What are the resources and capabilities, and how will we get there? Next will be approve or approval. We will, finalize the proposed portfolio. We'll have to get authorization from management for services and the resources we need to deliver those services. Upgrading, for example, to switches to multi-layer switches and from firewalls to security appliances. And the final process of this dynamic process is the fourth step. So I'll put 1, 2, 3. The fourth step is the charter. Okay? The charter is going to track the progress across the portfolio and then allocate resources. So this goes into project management, for example. We want to schedule and manage the overall design, the transition, the change, the retirement of services. This really ties in to the overall entire life cycle here. And again, we're going to need, sign off and approval from senior executives, CSO, CIO, CISO, individuals like that. We may also want to break this up from a project management standpoint into short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. Now when it comes to, once we get to the analyze and approve stage, we're starting to make some investments. And our service investments are typically split up into 3 categories. First of all, we have the RTB, which is run the business. And these are definitions that you need to know for your ITIL version 3. Okay, the goal is to maintain service operations. core services, non-discretionary services run the business. And then there's GTB, investments to grow the business. These have the goal of growing the organization's scope of services, branching out to provide more elaborate security services, more elaborate cellular services. This is growth. This is discretionary. Grow the business. Then you have TTB, which is transform the business, based on new things coming down the pipe, new technologies. This would be what we would call a venture. We would, get venture capital, for example. TTB, or transform the business investments, have the goal of looking at new initiatives and getting new market penetration and getting ahead of your competitors with new technologies and new solutions that others cannot provide. It may even demand that you take your provider or your company public to get a large influx of funds to be able to go and get into that venture. It may involve mergers and acquisitions of other companies and other software solutions, other technologies. We also have what are called 6 outcomes. 6 outcomes of service portfolio management. And you want to memorize these, and it's easy because they all start with the letter R. Okay? We have the outcome of renew. We would renew services because they meet the functional needs, but they fail technical needs. Okay? So they provide functionality, but from a technical standpoint, they don't work for us. So we're going to renew. We may replace. Okay? We have services that are not clear, or maybe they overlap other business functionality. So we're going to replace them with a different service. Then, of course, we'll retain services. Those are ones that are aligned with our business needs, that are relevant to the organizational strategy. Those are the ones that we're going to retain. You may refactor a service. Okay? They meet the technical needs. They meet the functional needs of the organization, but there's a gray area in the processes, or there's a gray area in the system boundaries. So we could refactor them to maybe strip it down to the core functionality and then add from there, move from there. So kind of reform, refactor. Retire. These are services that don't meet our needs, the minimum level of technical and functional fitness, so we're going to retire those. And then the 6th other outcome is to rationalize. Maybe we're going to release a new version of an operating system or a front-end database application or a service or some type of solution. So the 6 outcomes of portfolio management are to renew, to replace, to retain, to refactor, to retire, and to rationalize. We talked about making investments in our portfolio of services, and of course, aligned very closely with that is financial management. We want to make sure that we're offering a cost-efficient, a cost-effective overall governance and control management process of our assets and our resources that we're using to provide our IT services. We also want to make sure that part of this process is to enhance our financial insight, our vision, having an excellent grasp of the value of our IT services to the customer, also the value of the supporting assets, operations management, and support. This is going to be an art and a science because it's going to be constantly balancing and trying to find that delicate space between conflicting visions, balancing the business needs, the goals, and IT. For years, these were really kind of 2 separate parallel highways, and one of the main goals of ITIL version 3 is the convergence and the synergy of business and IT. And as an IT person, it's a wonderful thing because our role, our importance, our value to the business or the organization is greatly enhanced. It's upward mobility for IT people now because of processes that combine the business and information technology. Lots of benefits come from this financial management aspect, which means for those of us who don't really maybe understand accounting or finance, we can expand our knowledge beyond just being technical people to get improved decision making when it comes to financial decisions as they relate to IT and IT services. By having this synergy and this balance of vision, we're able to make changes quicker. We're able to move the ship and become more mobile and more flexible in a rapidly changing and competitive environment. It also allows us to enhance our services portfolio management, but because we have our fingers on the business and the financial aspects of that, and maybe financial compliance that is mandated by something like Sarbanes-Oxley. How does that play in? And just overall better operational control. Because we're bridging the divide between money and cost of services and the business aspect of services and its delivery. There are three main aspects of financial management as it relates to the strategy of IT service delivery. Three main activities, and I mentioned one of these already, but the first activity is the process of funding. This comes down to costs and the bottom line dollar, predicting our future needs for the amount of money we need to deliver the services and that we're offering, okay? Being able to monitor our adherence to defined budgets on a project by project basis. Making sure that we're not offering something in a portfolio that doesn't have profit built into it. We want to also make sure we're improving the business posture for IT projects and future initiatives, making sure the money's there and that it's properly provisioned. Next is IT accounting. We want to make sure that the IT organization is accounting fully and properly and legally for the way that they spend their money. Now, when you get beyond the ITIL foundation level, you will get into more detailed terminology like cost models, cost types, cost elements, direct and indirect costs, things like that that really go beyond the scope of this ITIL foundations. But we're going to identify costs by the customer. We'll categorize them by service, by activity, or other ways to logically group those costs. And then our IT accounting methodology can support better budgeting and make sure that any charging method is done in a efficient, simple, fair, and realistic fashion. And then the third activity would be chargeback. And this is optional, but this is again the way we charge customers for their use of IT services, and this can be done to get more efficient use of our resources. For example, you might charge for additional ad hoc usage of resources. One thing that's important about financial management is that it leads to, and it's tightly coupled, it works closely with our third aspect, which is demand management. Let's talk about that next. You know, this is really a neat aspect of being a service provider because you can take a lot of pride in your work by assisting as a service provider, assisting the customer in knowing and to a large degree influencing or steering the customer service's demands. The customer has a good idea of what they want to do, but you can influence them in different directions that are profitable for you, but also providing them with the best solution for their customer, the best solution for their company, and for their service needs. You're also going to look at, based on this demand that you've either influenced or they have as part of their knowledge base, you're going to be able to provide the capacity to meet those demands. And obviously providing this capability and capacity does tie into, your investment. So you can see how the financial management and demand management are tightly coupled. You're going to identify and you're going to analyze what's called PBA, which is the pattern of business activity. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is kind of an ongoing analysis of the business process, the different variations in the workload. What are all the variables that can affect this business? We'll use optimization techniques. We can develop what we can call user profiles or profiling the business. By the way, this demand management previously in ITIL version 2 and early on in the version 3 process was part of what we called capacity management. So, part of capacity management was asking the right questions, and it goes along with Demand management. Are we dealing with a healthcare organization? Are we dealing with a retailer? Are we dealing with a manufacturer? Are we dealing with a service organization? When does the business need this capacity, and why do they need it? Does the benefit of providing this outweigh the cost of providing this? Okay? Just because they have a demand for something doesn't mean they can afford the solution. And we have to be able to determine that and deliver that information to the customer. Does the demand for business services, can it be aligned with strategic IT objectives? So we have to really be ready to ask the right questions. And as I've alluded to, the primary source of this demand management information and data is going to come from the actual activities that the organization undertakes. So we would call that activity-based demand management. We need to thoroughly investigate how our served customer performs their business processes. What hardware and software and applications and services are used to manufacture their product or deliver their service or sell their process over the internet, sell their product over the internet. We want to be able to analyze, and I mentioned this, there should be a Y here, okay? We want to be able to analyze variations in their workloads and business patterns, certain times of the year or certain days of the week. And then we're going to build that user profile or business profile based on this. Now, we can get a lot of this information from the customer itself and from stakeholders and key participants. But we have to also be able to learn and anticipate variations. Is the company that we're working with, do they have seasonal variations? If it's a retailer, are they busy from Labor Day through the holidays? Is it cyclical? Is it based on some type of commodity that becomes available at certain times of the year? Do they have a cyclical business model? These are things we have to be able to anticipate because it's going to affect greatly a wide variety of factors and the overall strategy of delivering IT services. And again, this is a delicate balance of managing demand based on information from the customer and influencing demand, because remember, we're the experts, so we have to be able to influence the demand based on our knowledge base, based on our portfolio. And it's going to, it does involve just real world business savvy in steering them towards what we offer in our portfolio and steering them away from things that we don't offer on our portfolio, as long as we know that we're not steering them away from something that they need or have to have that's critical to their business operations. We need to be ethical about it. So we can influence demand several ways. We can do it through the physical and technical constraints. For example, managing the number of connections, the way we service their users, bandwidth, running times, things like that, those types of constraints. Or we can influence and manage demand via the financial chargeback mechanism. So for example, for services that are near capacity, or for services that are not cost effective for us, we can make them more expensive. Okay, expensive charges for services that might push us and the customer over capacity quotas. So it really gets to be a very interesting and tricky process here. But remember, our demand management is going to be activity based. It's going to be based on the customer, but we're going to also use their knowledge in concert with our influence to get just the right solution to get a win-win scenario. Remember, the key word here is strategy. Okay, we use strategy to play games like checkers and chess and Risk and Monopoly. Okay, so remember, this is strategic, and so it's going to involve some creative thinking, some manipulation, some business savvy. Again, this is real world stuff we're dealing with here. In this first nugget of the ITIL version 3 update series, we looked at several key areas. First of all, I gave you an introduction to this ITIL update and why we're doing this. Then an overview of the service lifecycle. We looked at the first aspect of this process, the service strategy. discuss some service strategy concepts and processes, then the three main components of service strategy. And again, strategy is the key word here. Service portfolio management, financial management, and demand management. I hope this CBT Nugget has been informative for you. I want to thank you for viewing.